Hey guys, this is what I'm calling my countdown video. 4 days left, so there will be a video that I'm going to ask you guys to watch this week every day. I don't really have a way of figuring out if you watch them every day, but again, so this is day 4 because it's Monday, so 3 days left will be Tuesday, 2 days left will be Wednesday, 1 day left will be Thursday. So please check out the videos this week. So the one I'm doing today to start off the week as we count down to the test is some predictions. So this is very important because this has to do with the test this year is different. So every year we try to make some predictions. And because this one this year is so much different, there's only so much the crystal ball can tell us. And I'm going to break it down from a math perspective. And this is one of the things I've said all year, no matter who my student is. Math helps you make predictions in any class. So let's break this down. We can pretty much tell the way they decided to open up the test and describe what the test is going to be like, that they will cover all 7 units, okay? So that means that each of our assignments, so if you haven't finished them, and I actually haven't finished putting up all my little videos, but you should have created a one-page document from back on week 6 that covers each of these. So you should have a one piece of paper or close to it squishing all these, and that's pretty much the only thing you're going to use the day of the test is those next to you. And so what I'm saying is that something from that test is something from that one-page summary is going to show up on the test. They're not going to leave any units out. Of these units, the ones that are the most likely or the ones that you really should be focusing on that might show up on 2 parts is section 1, 3, 6, and 7. Now you notice as we left, I really focused you when the last time we were together on 6 and 7 because I knew how important it would be for the test. If you've also noticed since we've been at home, I've put a lot of emphasis on section 1 and 3. So these are the parts that I know are the absolute most important. Okay, so those are the sheets that I would say make sure you actually know by heart. Make sure you watch my videos on each of those summary sheets because those are super important. And if there's anything on your summary sheet from unit 1, 3, 6, or 7 that doesn't make sense, you should be reaching out to me this week. Okay. And reach out to me live at noon every day, or if that doesn't work for you because your work schedule, of course, I'm available anytime by appointment. So just let me know. Okay. So what are our predictions for question 1? Well, our prediction is that it's going to be 6 parts. And I'm going to tell you why mathematically this makes the most sense. They've told us that question 1 is 55% of your grade and question 2 is 45% of your grade. So that means mathematically the way that would work is if you had a proportion out of 11. So in order for them to add up your score and grade it, the best way to get 55 and 45 is if it would be out of 11, okay? So that's why we're making the prediction of part 1 would be 6. So what do I mean by that? Is that when you open the test, it's going to have a fact scenario likely and an A, B, C, D, E, F. Ta-da. That's what we're saying with question 1. And what we're saying with question 2 is likely a fact scenario and an A, B, C, D, E. Ta-da, you're done. So, our thinking is time-wise, you have 25 minutes for the first question. So you've got 25 minutes here. And then only 15 minutes for this question. That means that you will need to be a little bit faster a pace on this section. You'll have a little less time. You might feel a little bit more rushed than you will in the first section. Okay, so what else is going to have to look different? There's a couple things that are different because of COVID-19. There will be a little less emphasis on the calculators because they don't know how many kids at home and they're trying to make that a little bit more fair across the board. Okay, so let's read through this section. Inference questions will look a little different than what they're going to look like on the StatMedics site, or I'm going to be opening up the College Board site. And that's what I mean from they're going to be looking a little bit different than from the College Board site. So in the past, students could expect to see at least one question where they were constructing and interpreting a confidence interval, and one question where they performed a full significance test. That's our section 6 and 7, right? Now, there's just not enough room for that. So you're saying to yourself, there used to be 40 multiple choice and 6 free response. Now there's only 2, so something's got to give. So instead, the exam is likely to ask about specific elements of that. So again, we practiced on and on and on, state, plan, do, conclude for a confidence interval, and a state, plan, do, conclude for a significance test. And in previous years, you had to be able to do both, right, on a test because there were 6 questions. Now, here's how they might break it into a little bit smaller pieces. In a confidence interval, you should be prepared to define the parameter, name the procedure, check the conditions, interpret the confidence interval, and interpret the confidence level based on a confidence interval, whether or not you have that convincing evidence for a claim, okay? So remember, this is similar that we did before. If you created a confidence interval, let's say you created a confidence interval that you think forward 40 to 60% of people watched Michael Jordan's Last Dance, but then somebody told you on the news that 67% of people watched The Last Dance. Notice it's not falling within the interval you've created. So that's when you say, that's when you can make some conclusions whether or not it falls in the interval. Okay. Next, what else should you be prepared to do? In the significance test, you should be prepared to write out your hypotheses, right? Name your procedure, check your conditions, test the statistic by calculating a p-value, interpreting that p-value and making a conclusion. Instead of there being like a big question and then a big open page like we had in class where you state, plan, do, conclude, it's more likely, what I'm saying here is it's more likely that these would be broken out a little bit more specific, like a section A, B, C, and D, so that they could grade them sectioned off, okay? All right, how would we assess a full SAT course in 2 questions? So once again, instead of 40 multiple choice and 6 free response, they only have 2 free response questions to assess the same amount of knowledge. So just using deductive reasoning, we know one of the questions would likely have to be about means, right? That's when we measure things. And one question is going to be a proportion question. That's a scenario of a yes or a no. And so now you're going to be pretty certain that as you read through the questions, you should be able to assess whether it's a mean question, which again would be your mu and your standard deviation. And here you're going to have your proportion, okay, and your standard deviation. Okay, what else? One question, likely, again, you're squished down to the 2 questions. So chances are, one question is going to be about a 1 sample, and one question would likely be about a 2 sample or 2 groups. So you asked 2 groups a yes or no question, right? I asked people from Bogey what they wanted to do with their graduation, and I asked people from Gibbs High School what they wanted to do. Yes, do you want to have some type of graduation ceremony now, or maybe one in June? Yes or no? Then that's what we're saying here, is that one of the questions would likely be 2 sample and one of the questions would stick with 1 sample. What else could we likely see because of this very unique test? One question that includes elements of a confidence interval and one question that includes elements of significance test. Again, we only have 2 questions and those are the 2 most important things. So we're going to have to put them in those 2 questions. Also look to see one question that involves sampling and one question that involves an experiment, right? So we went over that in section 1, in unit 1, the difference between sampling and an experiment. We're going to have to see that, okay? So this section where I'm asking yes or no questions sounds a lot more like sampling, right? And this scenario where I'm doing an experiment sounds a lot more like I'm going to measure something. I'm going to set up an experiment, right? And I'm going to assess and compare my results. And that sounds a lot like an experiment. And so it may be more likely that that would be a means question. How's it going to be graded? I think we've pretty much covered this as you've watched my videos and the other videos this week. It's fairly going to be the same. It's just the math is a little bit different. So things used to be out of 4 points. Now, as we pointed out, they're going to have probably 6 pieces for question 1 and 5 pieces for question 2. So the scoring is going to be a little bit different, and you should just try to get as many points as possible on each question in each section. Now, specifically, if you want to know exactly what I think the exam will look like, part of your homework this week is to actually do this practice exam. And last but not least, there has been issues with uploading. And so they actually, not for last week, but for this week, you can actually email College Board your answer. So if you're anxious about some uploading issues last week, you're in luck because people that have taken the test this week are going to have an option for upload. And last but not least, best of luck. Look forward to helping you review as we count down to the test on Friday.